Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy, and I'm excited for today. Something that I love studying is psychology and how it works on our minds and in our lives. And today we're going to be talking to Dr. Paul Jenkins, and he is a positive psychologist. And if you want to go watch some of his stuff, you can go on to Live Life on Purpose on YouTube, and he has just tons and tons of videos, a very thriving show, but it helps you understand a little bit of where my mind I trained my mind to go, but he's even like another level past me. So he works with organizations and individuals to establish and maintain positive perception and increase happiness, engagement, productivity, and profit. With 2 decades of experience as a professional psychologist, Dr. Paul lays out the how and the why behind positive thinking. It's like having an owner's manual for your brain. One you can actually read, understand, and apply. You may have seen Dr. Paul on YouTube at Live Life on Purpose, or heard him on TV, his podcast, Live on Purpose Radio. So we're excited to have him and just very grateful for his time. But Dr. Paul, fill in some of the gaps. What got you started in this industry, and why positive psychology versus just any type of psychology?
Positive psychology. Sounds like a contradiction of terms to some people.
It does,
right?
To a lot of people.
And I went to the positive psychology because I found that in our industry of psychology, there are some assumptions or some traditions that I don't think fit really well with who people are and what they're really about. It feels in traditional psychology, for example, that the number one question is, what's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. And I know that's probably a gross overgeneralization and probably unfair to many good people in the industry that I still love and admire and respect. But that's the driving factor. It's a pathology-based model. What's wrong with you? Can we diagnose that? And can we prescribe some kind of a treatment? And if you look at your mental health on a spectrum or a continuum, clear over on the left end is the sick end. So that's where we have diagnosis, pathology, treatment, all those fun things. I'm really more interested in the other end of that. Mm-hmm. And to understand that if we go to the middle first, that's health, meaning not sick. You'd mm-hmm. think health is the opposite of sick. But if we just call it not sick, then you could be sick in bed with a fever, throwing up. There comes a time when you can get out of bed and mm-hmm. you're not sick. But that doesn't mean you're truly fit, thriving, prospering. That's over here on the other end of the spectrum. So I basically moved my practice from the left end of that thing in the sick and pathology world, where I spent about 12 or 13 years actually mm-hmm. developing some skills and learning a lot. And I've moved it over here to the other end of the spectrum now, where it's all about thriving and prospering and living on purpose. And it is so much more fun. Yeah. I'm just saying.
I completely believe that. I know for me, I think one of the things that I've noticed in psychology is the same rules or the same principles need to apply on both. They apply on both ends of the spectrum. But
right.
my chiropractor explained it very similar to that. But he says, look, he only wants clients who are going to go to the thriving perspective. Like he says, a lot of people, they'll come in and they just want to get healed enough just not to need to go to him again.
Right.
Instead of like actually fix their body. And so he turns those clients away. The people who are just going to like stop working with him once
the first aid is accomplished.
Once the pain is no longer there. Then how do you get to like your optimum self? And that's where he says, look, only my clients are going to go to the optimum, or are you not working with me? So that's good.
Yeah. That's a pretty good capture of what positive psychology is all about. And there's some overlap in the middle of that spectrum. Everybody's got issues. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed?
Yeah, I do.
But I think that a lot of that middle of the spectrum stuff where we have depression, anxiety, stress, relationship conflicts, questions about the purpose of our life, that doesn't mean that you're sick. It probably means that you're human. So welcome to Earth. That's how we roll here. Mm-hmm. We can apply principles, like you were saying, the principles don't change across that spectrum. The principles are consistent. We can apply those principles that help us to get out of bed and stop being sick, to dealing with all this middle range stuff that we all have, to moving beyond that to an area where we're thriving and prospering, where we're truly experiencing joy. And I think that that's our purpose as human beings, to have joy.
Yeah, not just
Is that too simplistic?
No, I think it's absolutely true. It's not fleeting happiness, it's joy. And there's a big difference between like, oh, I'm
Right.
so happy in a moment, or joy to the point where you can always be like, it's just interesting. I don't feel like I'm always happy, but I very rarely am unhappy. And my wife doesn't quite get it. But I watched a recent video of yours on your YouTube podcast. And I think the method you used to explain it was really good. And it's basically like the relativity, right? You were telling a story about how your nephew, I think, had broke both of his ankles.
Yeah.
And your mind had actually originally went to, well, what if he
This
died?
is bad.
Yeah, this is bad. But then when you found out he just broke his ankles, you were like overjoyed that that's all it was. Now, that was still worse than the best case scenario. He didn't have any injuries, or he never fell.
Honestly, Samuel, when do we ever have the best case scenario or the worst?
I don't think ever. It's not in my mind.
It could always be better. It could always be worse than whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's pretty profound. That's pretty powerful, because our mind is constantly evaluating or judging what we experience. Whatever what it is. Mm-hmm. We're judging. Have you noticed?
Yeah. No, I agree.
You're constantly judging. You judge yourself. You judge your spouse. You're judging me. Right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it's okay. We're humans. We do this. How we judge depends on what kind of a comparison we pull up in our own imagination. And you can always imagine something better, and you can always imagine something worse.
Yeah, so along this line, because I was watching this video and I was thinking, okay, I know what you're saying, because I do this in my life regularly, where my mind goes to, well, it's not the worst case scenario, so that's just great. And sometimes when I'm just not sure how I feel, then I think, well, I intentionally think, well, what's the worst thing that could happen if I do this? What's the worst thing that could happen? And I go as far as bad as I can possibly think. And then I think, okay, well, am I willing to accept that if that's the outcome? Okay, then I should do it, right? So that's my thought process. But some people think, well, now you're being negative because you're just thinking of all the what if negative things. I'm like, well, sort of, but really I'm saying it's not as bad as the negative. So it's like a double negative thought process. It's an interesting.
Well, what you've identified there, Samuel, is really important, because there's more than one process that's going on in our mind. Evaluation is just one of those, where we judge what it is. Mm-hmm. There's another one. It's called creation. Okay, and we can't turn this one off either, any more than we can turn off gravity. We constantly are creating what is to be, and that doesn't exist yet. We haven't created it yet. So to create something, we have to first imagine it. You got a microphone in front of you. Do you think that just magically poofed into existence?
Pretty much. I walked in here and you just opened.
Boom, there it was. No. Yeah, I pulled it out of my closet where it's been sitting for, I don't know how old these mics are. I started podcasting in 2007. So that'll give you some sense. Same mics that I've always used. And before I started podcasting, I had to order these from the distributor, who ordered them from the manufacturer, who manufactured them based on plans that were drawn up by some engineer years ago, when he imagined first. He or she, I don't know who the engineer was, imagined this microphone before it ever became a reality. And that's how creation works. It has to be imagined first. So you can imagine the worst possible thing happening. Mm-hmm. Okay, is that because you're going to go create the worst possible thing?
No.
No, because you're going to imagine something better to go create it. You imagine the worst thing to see in evaluation mode that you're in a pretty good place already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And
then you feel gratitude.
So what's the process of helping somebody go from, because I feel like at least 90% of the time, I do have times where I think I am comparing a better situation and feeling poor me, Sam, right? That I'm not perfect, and so I do have those thoughts, but significantly less than other people in my life, where it seems that everything, no matter what's happening, they're always saying, well, it could be better, and that's all they're focused on. It could be better, and it's not better now. It could be better, and it's not better now. So how do you change, what processes do you help them go through so that they can begin to compare or evaluate against a worst case scenario rather than a best case scenario?
I love my job, which is to illuminate the obvious. Okay, think about that. Mm-hmm. I get paid to tell people things they already know.
True.
Which is just awesome that I figured that out. But here's the thing. There's a lot of obvious things that are completely unnoticed. And if we go there for a moment, like your shirt, can you feel it?
I can.
Is it obvious?
Yes, very obvious.
Now it is.
Now it is. Yeah, I didn't think about it before.
You didn't even notice it until I called your attention to it. Okay? And anybody, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you noticed it as well. You noticed your own shirt because I called it to your attention. Or the fact that we're speaking English. Did you notice?
I don't think about that ever.
It's obvious.
Right.
Isn't it?
Uh-huh.
But completely unnoticed till it's called to your attention. And people notice after it's called to their attention that their mind is constantly evaluating, which is one task, and creating, which is a very different task. And it uses a different end of your imagination to do it. When we're evaluating our life, it serves us well to imagine how things could be worse because that helps us to feel good about where we are. Mm-hmm. I had a dad in my office earlier today who was saying, oh, I'm just not a very good dad. And I'm like, really? Compared to what? Here's a guy who cares about his children. He's looking for ways to improve his life and their experiences. I used to get paid to do parental fitness evaluations for the court. I've seen some of the goofiest stuff you can imagine, including people who have killed their own children. All right? Now, I shared a few of those stories with him. How's he feeling now about what kind of a dad he is?
A lot better.
Oh, yeah.
I actually like my kids still. Just get stressed out.
Well, and see, we shift sometimes from evaluation to creation. And when we imagine that worst thing, we start to fear that maybe that's going to happen. Well, you don't know what's going to happen. You have something to do with it, but creation starts with imagination. So how do you feel when you imagine that what's coming, not what you already have, but what's coming, is even worse than what you've already got? How do you feel?
Fear, or there's another word, but fear.
Anxiety?
Anxiety, there you go.
That's the word I was thinking of because
anxiety,
it's a clinical term.
future.
But fear, anxiety, worry, apprehension, all of those things kick in. How do you feel when you imagine, because you don't know, that what's coming is even better than what you've already got? How do you feel?
Excited, adrenaline, focus sometimes.
Woohoo!
But yeah, pumped.
Yes. That's hope, excitement, anticipation. You don't know what's coming. And you're never wrong about how you feel. How you feel is 100% consistent with the way your own mind is doing these obvious but unnoticed processes. So when you ask, where do you start? You become aware. And sometimes that means you have to hire a coach or attend a seminar or watch a video that triggers your mind to, oh yeah, I am wearing a shirt, huh? Which is obvious but unnoticed until it's called to your attention. Oh yeah, I am judging myself, huh? Yeah, and I'm not here to tell you how to think. I don't have that kind of authority.
No, nor do you want to.
I just want you to see that you are, and in becoming aware of those processes, now you're in a position of choice.
No, this is really cool for me because I teach in my seminars and when I work with clients, I teach a lot of this, and I think that it really you have to become aware or identify who you are and identify like everything of who you are before you can have any level of confidence to actually change it, right? If you don't know what you can change, then you can't. And it comes up, I see it a lot in relationships of people getting married. They're going and trying to get in these relationships with people, but they don't know who they are. They don't know what's in their toolbox. They don't know what's in their like box of life. Yeah. And they're going around offering it to people like, buy this, get this, get this. And it's like, do you even know what's in your box? Do you worked through? Do you know who you are yet?
Taking the inventory.
Yeah. No, many of them haven't because it's too painful or whatever the reason is, and so then they're inconfident in interactions with in dating because they don't know what this person wants. They don't know what they're going to find. They don't know anything. But if you know exactly who you are and what you represent, then you can go share it with people, and then the people who don't like it, they tend to avoid you, and the people who do like it, they tend to spend more time around you.
Right.
And then once you have that confidence, then you can actually go create the legacy that you want. And that's really where you have my mantra, I guess you could say, is identify your identity, then become financially confident and emotionally confident that you can go create it, and then go take action. Because if you aren't taking action, then you're not going to create much.
Well, that's like drawing up the plans, but never buying the materials.
Right? No microphone if that engineer just kept them
it requires metal and stuff,
stuff that the engineer doesn't
I don't even know what all's in there.
Yeah, but I don't know either. It's a nice one, though. So I'm curious, when did you first start thinking about building a legacy or your specific legacy? Like, what started you thinking about, well, what am I going to leave behind in the future?
The name of my practice is Live on Purpose. And you mentioned the podcast, Live on Purpose Radio, the YouTube channel, Live on Purpose TV. It's about having a purpose and then engaging in that purpose intentionally so that life doesn't push us around. We've, like you were pointing out, you've taken inventory. You know what's in there, so that you know what to offer people. And you also know, this is maybe the painful part of it,
right,
what things you might be lacking or what things you're not so great at. Well, that doesn't mean that you're a flawed human being. It means you are a human being. And you get to interact with other human beings who can supply things that you're not so good at. This is what economy's all about. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
It's what gives us a reason to exchange with each other in the first place. So when you ask about my legacy, I think I realized early on something that is so profound and powerful and obvious but unnoticed, and that is that happiness is very literally a choice. But until you see it as a choice, it's not. You're going to roll with whatever you're programmed to think and feel and do. When you see it as a choice, and the model that I've been sharing with you here today is the psychological support for, oh yeah, this is how happiness is very literally a choice. Until you see it, it's not.
Yeah, it's so interesting because that's the truth with everything, really. Like, until you see that it's an option. I share this example with a lot of my clients of a lot of imagery from Asians. I don't know if there really happens over there, but the little man with a big pile of plastic bottles or whatever, a hay bale on their back, and they're just looking straight at the ground, and they're just walking in a line right after the other person. And then because everybody's walking on the same line, right, the average and ordinary person, they're just towing this line, then eventually it gets muddy and you're down in this rut, and all you see is your feet one step in front of the other, and this pile of stuff on your back just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you never realize that you could like drop the pile of crap and look up and there's green meadows right next to you. Like, you don't have to be walking in the rut, but because you're so focused on just towing the line and keeping all of your stuff balanced, your life balanced, you don't recognize you even have the option to not have to worry about all that stuff. It's just so it's mind-blowing, but that's the best imagery I've ever come up with. Like, they don't even recognize they don't have to carry it, or that they could walk on higher ground, or that they could be playing in green grass instead of this muddy hole with everybody else. Like, they just don't even, it doesn't even cross their mind. And so, as you said, helping somebody become aware of the option, aware of the choice, that's where actual progress can be made. Until somebody's aware, then it's just good luck. I don't know.
We just roll with our programming. Programming. Let's go there for just a moment.
Let's do.
Programming. I'm talking about the stuff that was installed before you had any choice. We're speaking English. Mm-hmm. Why? It's not the only language. It's not necessarily the best language. It's the one you and I were programmed with. Mm-hmm. Right? By people who made that decision for us. You didn't choose to speak English.
Nope. I guess depends. I ultimately did choose because that was the only way that I could communicate with other people, but I wasn't conscious of my choice.
And the point is, it's your programming.
Yeah.
It's your programming. And we get programmed by our early experiences, by our parents, by our culture, by our society to think or feel certain things. And that programming becomes natural and it seems right to us. Well, it doesn't mean we're right. It just means that's what we're used to. You can change your programming. It's kind of like changing your language. And when you learn another language, you become aware of this very quickly. I'm fluent in Finnish, which is just random and bizarre, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody I know that's ever learned it. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy to learn any other language. When I was learning Finnish, I had to make a very clear choice to learn it. I chose in. And even after the choice, it requires a whole lot of practice. Mm-hmm. And I had to get coaches enrolled to teach me that language. And I had to practice it with native speakers. And I had to continue to work on it until I developed a level of fluency. Well, positivity is the same thing. If we are programmed to think, oh, my life sucks, okay, whatever version of that we might be thinking, and it comes so naturally, and we know that we're right. Connect with that for a minute, Samuel. It's not that we think we're right. We know we're right.
You are right. Because that's the world you created. So.
It's your reality.
It is true. It's not wrong.
Yeah. And it requires some humility to say, you know what? Maybe I don't know. I had a client who said, you know what? I'm sure that it's going to be whatever. And I said, just notice that you said I'm sure. Because you are. Even though you have no clue what's going to happen, you're sure it's going to be whatever. Okay? Uh-huh. So as you connect with it at that level and you realize, okay, I got to have enough humility to give up my need to be right in exchange for being open. Like you were saying just a few minutes ago, until you see that there are options, you don't have any.
Yeah.
You literally don't have an option unless you see that you have an option. It could be there all day long. But not seeing it completely eliminates it from your life.
Yeah. Have you found in your practice when you're helping clients that when they tell you that they don't have any option, that just like agreeing with them and saying, you're right, you have no option, is that an effective way to call attention to the fact that there are options? Because I feel like a lot of people, they don't like being caged in. They feel like they're caged in, but they don't like to be caged in. So then when you tell them, no, you definitely are caged in, they're like, wait, no, I'm not. No, there's got to be another. Like, it goes against their their natural innate desire to be independent. And I think that's an innate thing that's in all of us as beings. We like to choose. And we're our before Earth programming is choice. I think that's just an energy thing. Like we're programmed to choose. And so when somebody tells you you have no choice, that's almost a more effective way of waking somebody up to the fact that there is choice than trying to convince them they have choice. I don't know. I'm curious.
I've had some experiences. I like to disrupt people's thinking.
Me too, but they don't like it always.
Well, because we get so used to whatever we're thinking. But until a disruptor comes along and suggests to us, wait a minute, you've got to be shaken a little bit. And one subtle way that I do this with my clients is I share the principles of positivity. It makes sense to them. It resonates with them. They feel that, yes, this is true. And truth has the ability to create liberty, to liberate us from what was keeping us stuck and to liberate us to go create whatever's next. So we're free from and free to. I really like that kind of a paradigm. But when people begin to latch onto these principles, I often hear this. In fact, I heard it just a few days ago from one of my clients who the lights were going on for her. And she was realizing, so I just really need to start thinking differently about this. Okay? Now that's a common aha. And my response is very consistent. Anytime someone comes to that aha, she says, I really need to start thinking differently about this. And I say, or not.
Or not. Yep, doesn't matter.
And she almost came out of her chair. She's like, but I want to. Oh, that's different.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. You don't have to. This isn't a should thing. I want you to see it as a choice. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I don't have that kind of authority. I just want you to see that you are thinking. And in seeing it, now you're in a space where you have a choice. And that is a beautiful thing. As people realize that, it creates freedom for them. And that, I think, is the legacy. When you ask, what's my legacy? The legacy I want to leave is happiness is a choice. You've heard that already, right. Okay? Let's take it beyond that and get past the trite, fluffy, motivational speaker version of that and get down to this is exactly how and why that is true. I want people to have an instruction manual for the proper operation of the equipment in their own mind.
Yeah, that's cool. And you're writing that, you're creating it, you have books.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, because I've listened to podcasts where I see it seemed like everything was great, right? Both the people on the podcast or all of them or one, they figured it out and they're just sharing what they figured out. But what was your process of when you found out that you had a choice, right? What was the process of when you were either your own biggest naysayer or you had other people around you who are telling you that you didn't have a choice? What was that process and that struggle like for you to become aware that you had a choice for you to go and teach others?
I like the word that you picked, process, because it is a process, not an event. Although there are many events I can point to,
sure, which
were significant. Times when I realized my own destructive pride was getting in the way. Events where I went through such painful circumstances in life that actually became a blessing to me as I realized, you know what? This was perfect for me. There are so many, and so it's hard to pin down a process to an event or two.
Maybe just share one event that illustrates kind of the struggle then.
One of them was my bankruptcy, which is a big black eye from a credit standpoint. It's a big shameful thing that you should never find yourself in position to do. I share this in my book. I was going through a time in my life where I had many investments. Now, I called them investments at the time. They were actually gambles. There's a difference.
A big difference.
But I needed to learn that, right? And so they all went south at the same time, leaving me in a position where I eventually was at the lowest point financially of my entire life. And as I came out of that bankruptcy court, the first thing I noticed, Samuel, everything was still in color.
Which is good.
And that surprised me. I don't know what I was expecting. Some 20s movie that's all black and white.
Well, that's how the TV advertisements are. They go from
Everyone
color to
hanging
black
their
and white.
head, right? And in shame. No, color. Breeze was blowing. Birds were singing. Kids were playing in the playground. And for whatever reason, that impacted me. It's like, oh. And I discovered that my happiness is not tied to whether I have money or not, which thing I had never supposed. Because before that, I thought, well, I've just got to have more money to solve this problem. I've got to pay that thing. And the interesting thing about that, and this is just an example, okay, of the way our life experiences will shape us. And in being divorced from money as a source of my happiness, it freed me up to choose it. I'm no longer dependent on it. I can choose to be happy no matter what. Now, I can do that with money. I can do that without money. I choose with, because I've learned how to use the tool.
Yeah.
Right? I've become a better steward of the resource. And I've found that it's not a scarce thing. It's an abundant thing.
Yeah.
But I had to change my mindset around that in order to get there. So do you have to change the way you think about money? No. You don't. You can continue to live in captivity. That's an option. Or you can rethink it. So that's an example. And I'm being very open with you about something that at the time I was not proud of.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people who have different situations like that who may be listening to this who aren't proud of different things they've done or that they're doing or that they're living or being at the moment. And they're probably in that, I mean, I love your imagery that you were seeing in color, because I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast, they sometimes are their moms and they're struggling with that depression after you have kids. What's it called?
Postpartum depression. Yeah.
And they don't realize that there's happiness after. And I think that it's almost what we've been programmed to think, right? You have these on TV commercials where they do start out light, and then you go into this depressive state, and then they give you this drug and they bring you back to happiness or back to color. So it goes from color, no color, color. And color is such an interesting word.
Butterflies and rainbows.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many colors though, but that happens in a lot of different commercials where if you watch TV and you're being programmed, you don't even recognize you're being programmed by this imagery, but you're being programmed to feel a certain way because of X event. So when you have an event, when you have a baby, you've already been programmed your whole life to get postpartum depression because that's what you believe is supposed to happen when you have a baby because of the imagery that you were shown. And the way out of that is the answer, whatever the answer in the commercial was, rather than recognizing even that you have other options. It's just an interesting thing, like the idea that there are options, and how to call somebody's attention to the fact that not everything is black and white or blurry and then Claritin clear or what. I mean, plug for Claritin. I've never taken the stuff, but it's that type of drastic change. And then I think about, how do I draw that for my clients? How do I paint that picture for them in a discussion? Yeah. Because they're already primed and programmed to understand that picture. They're already primed and programmed to understand that imagery. So if you're a business owner or something, if you can use that imagery that they're already accustomed to help them come out of or into whatever is going to be better for them, and whatever service or product you're offering that really is going to change their life, rather than fighting all of the past, use the past to help you get to a happier future. Right. Build on what you've learned. If you're going to pay that kind of tuition, you might as well take home the lessons. Yeah, exactly. Something. like that. So I'm curious, how can we then, the people on Fuel Your Legacy podcast audience, how can they get access to you? What's the best way to get access to you if they wanted to come into your office and start thinking more positively, or just, obviously you have the YouTube, but maybe just say all the areas where they can get in touch with you or have access to you.
YouTube obviously is something that we're doing a lot of right now because that really expands our reach. Mm-hmm. And it's a global audience that's getting excited about the principles that liberate us from the captivity of stinking thinking. And so I would invite anyone who's listening to connect with us there, Live on Purpose TV on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And that's free. We're sharing those resources daily for free. So obviously you want to go there. Now, to connect with me directly, you can go through the website, drpauljenkins.com, spelled with a DR. And we're constantly changing that, but you can always connect to me that way.
Yeah, I think my website changes weekly.
Yeah. But the books and the podcasts, there's links for everything there.
Okay.
So
perfect. And do you have Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah.
Is there a way for them to follow you there and connect with you there?
And that's constantly changing too. I've got people working on my team who are saying, you know what, we should do this differently. And I'm like, okay.
So figure it out, whatever works.
You can always find me there. Dr. Paul Jenkins. I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm probably on Pinterest too. I don't know.
Awesome.
I'm not doing a lot on some of those platforms, but Facebook I'm a little more active because I'll do Facebook Live videos. We're creating a parenting community there for people who want to be positive, conscious parents. I mean, there's a lot of...
On Facebook.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And there's a lot of cool things coming that way too.
Cool. Awesome. So we're going to get into what we call legacy on rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. There's 5 questions, and it's just going to be like a 1-word or 1-sentence answer to this, okay?
You know, you're talking to a professional speaker.
I know. I'm a professional speaker too, but we have to learn to get
Okay, we'll be
answers.
concise.
Okay, perfect. So what is holding you back from reaching the next level in your legacy?
My own thinking.
Okay. What's the hardest thing that you've ever accomplished?
Raising 4 kids.
And what's the greatest success at this point in your life?
Same answer.
Raising
4
thinking?
kids. Yeah, I'll go with both of them.
Yeah, no, good. And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes most to your success?
The principle that we've talked about, that happiness is a choice, and understanding why that's true.
Okay. And what books or book would you recommend to the Feel Your Legacy audience? Obviously, I think you should recommend your book, but other books as well. Where did you learn what you know?
Well, and thank you. My book is called Pathological Positivity, and I won't get into a lot of discussion about what's in that book, but it's basically my story and sharing how I came to what I teach now. Mm-hmm. Some of the most influential books, well, okay, I've been podcasting since 2007. I've interviewed a lot of authors. So you can connect to a lot of people who have influenced me by going to my podcast, Live on Purpose Radio.
Okay.
Some people that I've never interviewed that have had the most profound influence on me, Dr. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. Mm-hmm. And outside of sacred or holy scripture, those are the most profound books I've read. A new one that I just read recently is Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And that one is messing with my mind right now.
Yeah, I haven't read that one. I've read the other 2, Atlas Shrugged and Man's Search for Meaning, but I haven't read The Power of Now.
The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle.
That Power of Now. Wow, I'll have to look that one up. I'm always on the search for new books.
But and there's such an abundance out there. I could go on, but I'll stop.
There's thousands of books to read too. It's crazy. I think they said just the content that's being uploaded onto YouTube, if you every day for you to actually read it, it would take you like thousands of years to watch one day's worth of YouTube content that's being uploaded.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy to think that there's that much. Okay, so here's the final question, and you've kind of answered it a few times during the podcast, but I want to be more specific here, okay?
Okay.
Because this is, one, we talked earlier, and you actually help people establish this to a degree within their legacies. But now you're dead, okay? We're going to pretend you're dead. We're going to imagine you're dead.
Oh, thanks a lot. Glad I came today.
Yeah. Imagine you're dead, and now we're 6 generations down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're talking about your great grandchildren, and they're sitting around the table talking to their friends about who you were and what your life represented. What do you want them to be saying about you? What do you want your legacy to be at that point?
That I created more freedom in this world by helping people understand how their mind works, specifically around staying positive, no matter what.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Paul. We really appreciate it.
It's been fun.
Yeah, I had seen your stuff on YouTube, saw a little bit on Facebook, not as much, but definitely on YouTube I saw it a lot. And I never thought that I would ever meet you or a lot of other people that I met at the NSA.
The National Speakers Association.
You just go to one place and all of your people you've been, how do I get in touch with that person?
Isn't that a fun place?
They all just show up. Man, that was like Christmas or better than Christmas. I don't even know. Like TED Talks, I think what TED Talks was supposed to be, where you go and meet all of your heroes. They all tend to be in the room. It was crazy.
That's where they go. Yeah. That's where we hang out.
I super appreciate that. So any of you guys listening, if you would like to have a shout out on the next episode, then just take a screenshot of you listening to this, post it on Instagram or Facebook, and tag Dr. Paul or myself in it, or both of us, and we'll give you a shout out on the next podcast. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.